Hello, welcome to my commentary for Intractable. I haven't been making any videos lately because I've been planning a few. Also, just kind of figuring things out for myself. I realized this morning that today is the anniversary, as you would call it, of Intractable. When I finished principal photography for this, I haven't really um, spent a lot of time answering questions about creating Intractable as much as I would like, but I would also like to just kind of sit down with you and explain my processes and my thought processes while I was making this film, if you would be so kind to oblige. So, without further ado, let's begin the film. This disclaimer is probably not necessary, but I had some insecurity about the whole thing. Now that opening title card is actually something that I had in an earlier rendition, not of Hero, but of this script that I had called Peter, and I loved it so much that I used it. Really wish I was able to stabilize these. You could tell what was shot on a stabilized lens and what wasn't. We shot all of this near the very beginning because I just knew I wanted this, and I just had my friend Scott come out, and he's a brilliant cinematographer, and I just kind of told him, look, just go ahead and do what Scott's do, and this is a kind of a homage to my older script as well. I always thought the idea of Peter fishing with his web shooters was pretty cool. Something we haven't seen before. Those fish were actually digitally added. I couldn't I couldn't get any. I had some in my fridge, but I didn't want to take those from my parents. They'd probably be like, "What the hell are you doing?" So that shot is way too shaky. Couldn't do anything about it though. We shot this, I think, after I got everything I needed. I was shooting a client video and I saw the sun was setting and I realized it was fall, and it was like, well, crap, you know, I'd love to show a transition of time, so that's what I did. I shot this, I think, near the very beginning as a camera test, and I loved it, so. Now, this is an opening that I regret, not just because I have the Rick Astley song playing, because what was funny about that was I was Rickrolling the audience, but YouTube ended up taking the song out, and they were like, you know, we'll get rid of your video altogether if you don't get rid of the song. And I was just kind of like, really? It was kind of hilarious. I mean, I ended up Rickrolling myself essentially. I was the one Rickrolled. But I would have loved to start it with something other than his bed, because that's how a lot of fan films start. Again, I think this is one of the very first things I shot.
Hey, Nathan.
Hey man, where are you?
Yeah, sorry. I overslept.
Overslept. My mom's gonna be home in about an hour. If you see me,
I
freak out.
originally
Yeah, I'll be
casted
there in
three
a
different
little
people
bit.
for
Just hurry
Nathan,
up.
or not
Alright.
casted, but auditioned three different
Jesus.
people for Nathan. One was my friend Blake, and then Kadeem, and then this other kid, and
Alright.
none of them really matched exactly what I was going for, but I didn't have the resources necessarily to find, you know, more efficient talent.
Are you still staying with Nathan?
This is an actual counselor that I had in high school. She was a good friend of mine. So she obliged to letting me shoot this little scene because she knew I've been trying to make a Spider-Man movie for a long time, so.
You're gonna have to talk to me at some point.
I had to shoot all of that on a tripod, and I didn't know how to color grade back then, so I just kind of added, you know, a toner and a digital shake to it so that it felt like it wasn't shot on a tripod, but the more I think about it, probably would have been better that way. This was shot on the same day that we shot his phone conversation with Nathan. I was hoping that this tombstone would surprise people as much as draw them in.
I knew I'd find you here.
It's been a year.
Again, just a scene to establish the world we're in and the characters' relationships with one another.
I'm sorry I didn't show up to class today.
Well, my mom didn't catch you at the house, so it's all good.
Originally, Nathan was actually Miles Morales. I was never going to have a plan for Miles to turn into Spider-Man. I just wanted Miles and Peter to be friends in high school. I did have that in Hero, but I just didn't. I wanted to deviate as far away from the original incarnation of my film as possible.
It's halfway across the world. There's nothing you could have
No, I
done.
mean if I was there. If I was
We
there,
did
I
like
could've-
20 takes of this.
I could have used my powers to save them.
Look, I know this may be hard for
What
you.
I love about one-shots like this, you know, where there's two people in frame and it doesn't cut over and over again, is that it
My parents,
it brings
they
you
said
in
there's a son
more.
in the
You're
house.
looking more at the subjects. You feel like you're capable of studying the frame a little bit more, and it kind of just brings you further in to the story. Virtually everything you're seeing right now was shot on a tripod except for the opening. I didn't have a cameraman. I didn't have the ability to get Scott to help me shoot everything. So a lot of the time I was just using my 50mm and just kind of going out and getting the shots that I knew I could get and moving on from there. That was a sky replaced shot. There's no city there. As if I'd even have to say that. It doesn't look that good anyways. That's digitally added as well. That is definitely digitally added. I think I had a ad for something on YouTube on my screen and I just used it and tracked it. Once again, beautiful sound design by Yasha. Now the color grading on this is a little weaker. I pushed up the blue hues on the shadows a little too far. I was trying to simulate nighttime. This was shot during the day. Nathan, the guy playing Nathan, is actually the man who just panned, and he moves around the house through the door frame. You can see his shadow in the hallway, and he kind of stands there and waits for his own cue for a moment. Now, if you look in his right hand, which you can't see it because we strategically placed, condiments and things like that in front of the frame. He originally had an iPhone in his hands recording his audio, but it wasn't aimed directly towards his mouth, so there was a lot of technical issues, audio issues, and I had to essentially ADR all of his audio and keep mine. This was not a one-shot originally. I think we reshot this scene about 3 times because I never got the intensity that I wanted, but I also got, like I would say, okay, this is a little too chill, and then we would reshoot it, and it would be too much. It would be far too much.
I thought you were over this whole vigilante thing.
And so we had to find a balance, and I think performance-wise, this was actually the stronger one out of all of them, but it was a one-shot, specifically because I had this idea that if you were on the outside of the frame looking at, you feel like a fly on the wall for the conversation, and the fact that it's not moving and the fact that there are no other camera angles, it makes you uncomfortable and it makes you kind of exhausted and disinterested, and it's supposed to kind of emphasize on what Peter's going through at that point, and you know, what the world is like. I think there was a better way to do this, but when you're the only person on camera and you have to make all these other elements work, you know, at times you have to just kind of compromise, and it's very difficult to compromise. But on a film like this, considering it is a fan film, lapses in quality are somewhat acceptable. That's not why I did that, but you know what I mean. I feel like it could have been done a little bit better, but we've already shot it, and I don't see the point in regretting it at this point. Digital pan up, this can burn as I walk off. Hate that little nudge I have on my arms. This was shot in a town close by. I was trying to simulate New York, and it's probably the closest thing I had at the point, because I didn't have a car and I didn't even have my own camera. Well, I had my own camera. I was borrowing lenses from Scott. That was shot on green screen. It wasn't very hard. I just had Joey go out to this abandoned house that he knew about, and he shot some still footage, and then I just filled myself in. Like, that's something Joey shot. This was kind of shoehorned in, because I knew for logic's sake that he needed to go find Peter, so.
Why do white boys always run off?
That line was just kind of, you know, there. Now, this is actually in the basement of Scott's house. There's something about it. It was just very eerie. And we've shot something there for a client before, and it looked amazing. So we decided we were going to shoot Intractable here and just have kind of like a beautiful moment where you build the pieces for yourselves. Like with the happy birthday thing, you can go, okay, well, they left on his birthday, but you don't know how old he was. You could say 6, but you could also say 15. So it's a very interesting thing. It doesn't pander. It's not very verbose. You just learn of these characters really in a very subtle way. It's haunting. Very haunting. Now, this shot is quite, it's odd because we actually spent more time on this coverage first. It ended up looking a little bit better, but for some reason it just I really like this scene, even with Randy's score. Randy's score is amazing. I love everything that the guy does, but for this particular moment, it's very interesting. Just feels exactly like how Spider-Man is supposed to. And that's just a random picture I got of Joey off of Facebook. Now, Joey composited and edited all of this, but the way we got it done was we got on Skype, and for a good few hours, we went over the scene about 6 times with each other. So we're actually talking to one another here. It was really interesting because we were shooting a scene simultaneously on green screen in 2 different countries, and I don't know how often that's been done before, but I'd like to bet that it hasn't. I think it came out decently. I just think maybe it could have been paced a little bit better, and also his shots look a little bit better because he had a 50 at the time. He had a 50 millimeter. I was using, I believe, a 25 to 70 millimeter, or no, I believe it was might have been a 25 to 200 or 70 to 200, but it was a Tamron lens and it was very unstable, so I couldn't get the same focal length that he had. My room was really small and he was in a pretty big room. I really should have considered shooting it in a more spacious environment so that the cinematography felt more coherent.
What are they doing now? Now they've created.
It was Joey's idea to have that writing on the walls, and it was really cool.
You also know exactly how they died. You were also
This scene was just supposed to be for fun. When I had it written out and everything, I was just like, no, we're just going to introduce Cletus, but we'll never show him. And that still might be the case, because if we're going to bring Cletus into another world, it would just cause issues. So, but yeah, I didn't make Intractable with another world in mind. I just made Intractable as a very good standalone film. I just made Intractable as a standalone film. So now that we have this sequel in the works, it does create some jarring difficulties, but we'll be able to kind of brush over it in another world. I think we'll be able to brush over it in the sequel.
Which brings me to my next point.
You see that little red button by the right of you?
I had a shot where I showed the button, but yeah.
Every single cell in this hellhole. If you want information on your father, you're gonna have to grant me my freedom.
And what's gonna stop me from cracking your skull clean open as soon as I get my answers?
Oh, don't you worry. You will not be getting the answers from me. They are far too messy. You will get the location though.
Joey's performance in this was a lot different than what I was expecting. I was expecting something a little bit more stoic and exhausted like the rest of the world. So when he pulled that out, I was like, oh yeah, sure, wow, that's actually a lot more energetic than I was looking at, and it's really cool. I think the music in this, with the strings that Randy has, are really, really good.
You see, this thing runs but never walks, sometimes sings but never talks.
It was Joey's idea to have that line in there. And I never showed the watch, or the clock rather, before this, because I just wanted people to just kind of move along with it. Just move along like this is a really high-speed train. You just have to keep up and just kind of piece things together. I did not in any way want to profusely pander or grade the audience, Obviously there's a door there, and I just had to digitally add some bricks and a clock. And we see the watch is actually a key, so things start to make sense for Pete. That was an iPhone camera icon, if anybody caught that. I could have done a little better rotoscoping that, but it is what it is. Scott shot this, and I think that's very apparent that Scott shot this. I think we could have done a little bit better with the lighting, but for a low light camera like the 550D, I think it's actually pretty impressive. However, the color grading could have been a lot better. The reds are far too pushed up, and there's a lot of color banding because I didn't curve things well enough. And you see that Loey Jeever Easter egg.
Be looking for me soon. I can't stay long, Phineas. They might trace me back to this lab.
Why is the department releasing a statement?
Now you see this is my friend James Scott. He's a pretty great actor. I met him in high school and he was on a lot of our broadcasting projects.
I did everything I could.
Richard.
Now that this whole scene, even if you just hear the music, you can tell that there is that it is kind of a love letter to one of my favorite sequences in the Harry Potter films. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, when Harry has that revelation.
Then, sir, we need to get you to a hospital.
In Deathly Hallows Part 2, when Harry has that revelation of, you know, this evil kind of plot that, you know, Dumbledore has been plotting behind him. That sinister plot that Dumbledore has been planning this whole time. It's, you know, it's obvious even in the way the strings kind of rise. I love the music that Randy has. Also, if you can hear the voice kind of bouncing from acoustic to, you know, a really obvious, more literal voice, right? Hear that? That was Yasha's idea, to add depth to the room, and I loved it. I thought I would have never done that. It would have just been very literal.
I can't be a part of this, Richard.
Then what can you be a part of? Peter's sacrifice could go on to save millions, Phineas. His life is minuscule in comparison. If you don't do this, you'll be the reasons thousands more die next month.
The noise in this shot is pretty bad, but it is what it is.
So when the time comes, Peter must die?
Yes. And you must make sure he is bitten. That is essential. He will only have a few years left after the bite before he dies of radiation poisoning. You must harvest him after the spider's brand of DNA has completely bonded with his own.
Essentially the callback to Harry Potter. It's one of my most fondest memories, and I just wanted to kind of pay tribute to it. I think the transition from blue to a more standard color worked there, but for the majority of that shot it was just a little overbearing. This is naturally one of my favorite shots in the film because it was one of the first shots I ever wanted. This, along with the shot in the 26 mark where I get up in the suit, these are incredibly important moments in Peter's life, in his growth as a character, so I needed them to be photographed as expertly as we possibly could, as beautifully as we possibly could, because those images need to stick with you over time, and hopefully they did. So now this was all shot it was pretty sunny outside. I mean, it was really bright outside, actually. That was shot in an actual rainstorm when it got closer to night, and I got that shot. But this is all during the day, and I had to rotoscope around Kadeem to give it this, you know, nightly feel. That is actually the laptop that I edited all of my old videos on, so it's kind of hilarious for me to throw that. I'm basically saying, goodbye, old life, you know.
If you hear this, it means it also means you've seen the security tapes I preserved for you before locking this show.
Graham Parker did an amazing job with the voice for Richard Parker. I think he had an original recording where he sounded a little sicker, and I loved it, but I was going for something a little bit more like literal.
Such as your radiation poisoning. I told Phineas that you would die within a decade's time after the bite. With this, you could live for 100. The suit will realign your system's immunity, feeding off the healing factors of your spider powers.
Randy's score in this is amazing.
Faster and greater than anyone has ever imagined. The time is now to decide what you will do with this. Save the world from disease, or save the world from everything else.
Now this is again shot in Old Town. I had to add the city in the backdrop because we didn't have the gas money or anything like that to go to Atlanta. See that? Pretty much all of that is fake. Again, this is shot during broad daylight, and I tried to make it look like it was kind of, you know, a brighter overcast. When I heard this, I teared up. This music is really powerful. It just felt like Spider-Man has come. He's here now. It's okay. I love that shot so much. Now, the plane sequence was supposed to be a little bit better, obviously. What happens when he jumps off and Nathan runs away was originally I was going to have a shot where he's web zipping past buildings. The reason why I, you know, couldn't make that work was because it just felt really awkward because everything was 2D and I didn't have any 3D software and I didn't know how to use 3D software, so literally everything that you see is 2D images that I had to try and make three-dimensional. So I'd have to find images of planes offline and, you know, off Google and use those. And I think when you put that into respect, this plane crash is a little bit more impressive on a compositional scale, just not, you know, as a final work. It doesn't work all that well. But you live and you learn, and eventually that will probably never be a problem again. It's my friend Rocky Mariello. He helped me shoot the sunset in the beginning. Oh, the money shot. I love this shot so much. You know, so much is happening in that moment when he says, I don't know. He's giving permission for Peter to do what they both know he's supposed to do. And I think that was a very profound moment where not much was said, you know, but you showed everything that needed to be there. I had to guerrilla shoot this. This is actually a house in my neighborhood that I had to kind of like knock on the door and ask if I could film in their yard, and they were like, yeah, sure, you can get a shot of the house, just don't get a shot of our cars. So I had to place the camera, you know, and of course digitally replace the address on the mailbox.
I didn't think I'd ever see you again.
Shot on the same day as that, and this is James.
Sorry you had to track me so far away from you.
The glasses really were his idea. He kind of showed up with them, and it was like, these are a bit big, aren't they? But the more I thought about it, the more that I realized that it actually kind of added a character to the you know, it added a trait to the character, and it was very iconic. The more I think about it, when I think of Phineas now, I think of those huge glasses, and they're a bit cartoony, but so are other aspects of this film. So
trying to be happy, only to realize that I'm not allowed to. You haven't given me much of a choice. This isn't a gift, it's a curse. But I forgive you.
That was originally a scene in Peter where he was forgiving his uncle's killer. It was just as profound, I think. This was shot on the same day that I answered the phone in the kitchen from Nathan, and I really loved how this played out. I think that was shot on a vintage 50mm, and I hated the way it looked, so I never used it again, except on that note shot. The compression was too bad, it wasn't very sharp.
Nathan.
Randy's score is amazing in this.
You died in that crash. I want you to bury me, because you'll be burying my apathy.
We shot this, I think, the day after the other graveyard scene, because I didn't want to stay in that graveyard for too long. I wanted to kind of get out of it as fast as possible.
Because I can be what no one else can be. I can be a shadow. A watchful face in the crowd.
Shot this on the same day as the explosions in Old Town, so you can tell that it was actually shot in daytime. This was a scene from Hero. This was an actual scene from Hero. I shot this on a 60D at 30 frames per second, had to make it like 24. That's a line from Hero. I still ended it the same way I wanted to, no matter what. So that was very important to me. But yeah, I really appreciate you watching this. There are some issues with it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not necessarily insecure about it, but I know that I'm gonna try better the next time. And you know, since this was the first bigger project that I've done, I figured it was fitting to kind of give a commentary and let people in on my, brain and pick it apart. And the score by Randy is incredible. The sound design by Yasha was great too, and everybody that contributed to this in any way was a huge help to me. It was very rare that I would be able to get anybody in on it. That you can tell from the credits. It's just a very small list of people. I had to shoot it all on a tripod, and and it's a testament to what you can do with very little. I think this was shot for $30. It's shot on the budget of a Red Lobster dinner, and there's a lot of things to the film, really. I think ultimately I am very proud of this, and I think the flaws are only there as a testament to how much I will grow as a filmmaker. And hopefully those issues that you see again, and hopefully those issues that you saw in this film are not issues that you'll ever see again in my other works. Hopefully I will take this as a learning exercise, and ultimately I just really appreciate the support. And I think that it's very important that I have an audience, and I can't stress enough that what that means to me. So if there's anything you need me to do, please let me know, because you've done so much for me. Thank you. Have a good day.